Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew, before we drop into today's episode, I have two things that I want to share with you. The first is that the pre-order for my upcoming book, Awaken the Magic Within, Rediscover What Your Bones Remember, is now live. I'm going to drop the link in the show notes, but if you sign up for a pre-order, you'll receive an exclusive rest ritual immediately, and you'll be the first with access to read this beautiful little book that I am creating. The second thing I want to make sure I share is that the summer healing special is ongoing. I still have a few places left to drop into remote healing work with me to support your nervous system, your heart, your spirit this summer. These healings happen completely remotely, so they're not another thing to add into your already full and busy summer days. You get to go about your day while you receive. I send over a voice note when I wrap up your healing with all of the energy work that I did, any advice that I receive from your guides, and a card pull to support the reading and healing. If this is of interest to you, there's a link in the show notes as well for this. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to me by email, eileen@myluminouslife.ca, or send me a note over on Instagram at @IamEileenMarch. Okay, now for the episode. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a solo episode for you all about Lughnasadh. If you are listening to this when it comes out, it is still a few days before we celebrate this next turning of the wheel of the year. Or perhaps you're listening to this after and learning in retrospect about the celebrations and the energies that have passed and are yet to come. The beauty of the wheel of the year is that no matter what, things will come around again, right? That idea that time is not linear, it is cyclical. And so whether you're listening to this in July, November, March, it doesn't really matter, because the end of July, the beginning of August will come again. Lughnasadh will greet us once again with abundance. And so I'm going to share a little bit today about the history of this festival, the energies of it, some of the things you might choose to do to celebrate, and some of the mythology around it, as always. If you are listening to this prior to July 31st, 2025, then you still have time to sign up to join us, to sit in ceremony and sacred sisterhood, to celebrate this turning of the wheel of the year. We'll be gathering on the 31st in the evening, online only this time around, because I head out for some vacation that has been much anticipated the following day, and I didn't have it in me to host in my home the night before leaving, but I did have it in me to host online because I still very much treasure the ability to gather for each of these 8 Wheel of the Year celebrations with women in sisterhood. And so if you're curious or interested, you can head to my website. The announcements bar at the top of the website on myluminouslife.ca will take you right to the Lughnasadh sign-up page, and we would love to see you there at that ceremony. Or if you're feeling like you want to tuck into it over the weekend, maybe you missed the ceremony but you'd like the replay, there is a replay that will go out. And so you're welcome to join us in spirit that way. So Lughnasadh. Lughnasadh is the first of 3 harvest festivals in the Wheel of the Year. It is the harvest of the first wheats. And we see this focus on the first grains, the first grain harvest, in the Christianization of this festival as well. You may very well be familiar with the term Lammas or Lammas bread. And so just like with all of the Wheel of the Year celebrations, when the Christian church, when Christians came into Celtic lands and were trying to bring the people into the fold of Christianity, they continued to celebrate in very similar fashion often these 8 points of the year. They were important, regardless of what your beliefs were, whether you are Celtic, whether you are Greek, whether you're Chinese. There are celebrations and festivals and markers and moments of the year that were important to all of our ancestors who lived their lives so much more focused and tied to the agricultural turning, right? The seasons, because most people were engaged in agriculture in some form, especially compared to today. And so Lughnasadh, this beautiful word, it is not spelled the way it sounds, as is the case so often with Gaelic, with Celtic, with Irish names. You'll be able to see it in the title if you're not able to peek at the title again. And it is named after, we believe, the god Lugh, Lugh. And Lugh has many epithets. He is known as the Shining One. He is known as the Many-Skilled. He was a warrior. He was a magician. He was a skilled craftsman. He was a poet and an orator, so many skills. And one of his stories, or one of the myths about him, speaks of him requesting access into the Tuatha De Danann, this mythical tribe of beings who were the first inhabitants of Ireland, the land of Ireland. So Lugh is an Irish god. And they're considered gods. So the Tuatha De Danann are the supernatural race of beings. They're often concurrently just called gods or goddesses of Celtic Irish history, lore. And in some versions of the story, Lugh is just, he is of the Tuatha De Danann. And then in other versions, he has to request access to become a member of the Tuatha De Danann. And to do so, he has to prove his worthiness. And so he says, well, I am an amazing poet. And they're like, we have poets. And I'm an amazing warrior. Well, we have warriors. I'm an amazing craftsman. We have those too. And, he goes down his list of many skills, and eventually he says, but do you have somebody who is incredibly talented at all of them? And they say, oh, no, we do not. And so he's granted admission into the Tuatha De Danann. So that's a little bit about Lugh himself. The festival of Lughnasadh, however, the mythology around this, so this is a harvest festival. It's a harvest celebration. As I said, it's the first of 3 harvest celebrations in the Wheel of the Year. The next one is Mabon, which is the newer name, quite recent actually. It's a pagan name for the autumn equinox. And the final one is Samhain, right? That last harvest of gourds and the things that take longer to ripen. So first harvest, Lughnasadh. This is a celebration of the fertility of the land. It's a time of community. It's a time of offering generosity and compassion. In terms of an agricultural world, people would be gathering together to help each other bring in the earth's bounty, the harvest at this time. So whoever's fields were ripening first, the whole community would go and harvest and gather and bring in that grain from that person's field. And so it would go through the community as different fields came into full fruition. The community would gather together and help. So it's a time of a lot of work, but also of a lot of joy. The milkmaids would be coming back down from the spring sheelings. The milking time would be slowing down, and so we'd have this influx back into the community of these young eligible women. So it's also a time of hand fasting, which in a lot of ways is also a time of making new alliances, right? Community celebration, feasting, and of course, sacrifice to the gods. The first fruits of the harvest would typically, and this goes into, again, cross-cultural. We see it in Greece, we see it in these Celtic cultures. I'm sure we see it elsewhere as well. This offering back to the land of the first fruits. And what's really cool about Lughnasadh is that we actually have really solid evidence dating it back to at least 1600 BCE. So it's one of the older ones in terms of having like concrete examples of the celebrations. That's not to say, obviously, we also have some really obvious proof that people were marking the solstices and the equinoxes a long way back. Obviously, we've got a lot of architecture that lines up with the sun on those days. Again, we think of the Mayan pyramids and all sorts of Aztec architecture, Celtic architecture, all sorts, again, around the world. But with the cross-quarter festivals, which is what Lughnasadh is, it's a cross-quarter festival, just like Samhain, just like Imbolc, just like Beltane. There is sometimes a little bit less obvious ancient evidence. So anyways, that was a long side tangent to say it's really cool that we have evidence dating back this far of the games that were held. So not only was it a time of harvest, a time of a lot of work, and gathering together in community to get that work done in generosity and support of one another, but it was also a time of celebration. And so we have these games, almost Olympic-like, happening in Ireland. There'd be archery, there'd be chariot races, there'd also be competition between the craftsmen, goldsmiths or metalworkers. And the games themselves, this celebratory week around August 1st-ish, it's about the midway point between midsummer and the autumn equinox. They were in honor of Lugh's foster mother. So fostering is really common all through the Celtic lands in ancient times, where young boys were sent off to be fostered with another family. And this built alliances that were really rooted and deep and kept a lot of peace in the land. And so Lugh was sent off to be fostered. I can't remember his foster dad, but his mother's name was Tailtiu. I think I'm saying that wrong. Tailtiu. Tailtiu. And in the mythology, she is responsible for clearing the land of Ireland to make way for agriculture. She clears the forests, she plows the fields, she clears land so that the people of Ireland may engage in agriculture and feed themselves from the land's bounty and abundance. But this is an enormous task because Ireland is covered in trees. It used to be covered in oak forests. And so in the clearing of the land, she pushes herself so hard that she dies of exhaustion. And so the mythology around Lughnasadh goes that it is Lugh who institutes these celebratory games in honor of his foster mother. So this festival is really associated, again, with competition and games, with community, with grain specifically, the harvest of it. So there's lots of imagery with the wheat and with bees, because this would also be a time of what we call bee transhumance, where the hives would be taken up into the pastures, into the heather, and the bees would collect the nectar from the heather flowers and make heather honey. And so bees are also a symbol of Lughnasadh and the abundance of the more than human world. Bees, honey, etc., etc. As I mentioned, Lughnasadh is one of 4 cross-quarter days. And so if you've been with me for a while, you'll maybe remember that the cross-quarter days, And again, the quarters, the solstices, the equinoxes. The cross quarter is the midway points between those. They're also known as fire festivals, and they mark the beginning of the next season. So currently in Irish, Lughnasadh means the month of August. In the wheel of the year, in that more ancient way of tracking time and the cyclical movement through the seasons, Lughnasadh is the season of autumn. And when I first started learning about the wheel of the year and the fact that autumn begins on August 1st, or technically at sundown on the 31st, because again, in the Celtic world, the new day begins at dusk and the new year begins in the dark. But when I started learning about this and the fact that autumn started on August 1st, I had a moment of like, what do you mean? Like, it's middle of summer. It's hot. It's, slow moving in a lot of ways, based around our school system, right? July, August is summer. How could August 1st possibly be autumn? And then I noticed on August 1st, that year, it was 2 years ago now, when I stepped into my lawn to do my morning breathing, my morning prayers, my morning connecting with the more than human world, I had my hand on my heart, my hand on my belly, taking those breaths, speaking my gratitudes, and I looked down and I saw a leaf, a yellow leaf sitting on my lawn from the tree beside me. And while most of the tree was still green and lush and alive, it was this little nod to like, okay, there's a shift coming. Even though the days are still hot and a little bit languid feeling, the nights are getting longer, and it starts to become really obvious in August, right? That the sun is going to bed a bit earlier. We start to have a cooling down overnight often, depending where you are, of course, and what the weather is doing that year. But there is this sense of subtle shift. And I think part of the reason that for me, August has always felt like a bit of a sigh. The energy goes down. It's still these lovely, languid summer feeling days, but I have a little bit less of that buzzy energy, of that outgoing, outward energy, and more of a sense of wanting to slow down, to rest more, to take those beautiful afternoon naps in the hammock, to turn inwards. And again, when I started learning about the wheel of the year, it all made sense, because autumn is a time of turning inward. It's a time of wrapping up, detail-oriented work. We're bringing in the harvest and preparing it for winter. And so there's lots to be done, but it is this sense of, okay, we're preparing to go inward. We're making preparations for that long dark that is ahead. So that's where I'm feeling into these energies of August, despite the fact that it's still beautiful and warm, despite the fact that this year, the weather is definitely not even barely summer. It feels like May here still. It's just warmed up again today. It's been cold and rainy. And that's a part of the reality too, I think, of working with or walking with the wheel, cycling through with the wheel, is noticing and noting where our weather patterns are shifting and changing, and adapting ourselves to that, but also becoming more aware and conscious of how much those shifts are really happening. This episode is not going to be long enough to get into all the implications of what it means as our weather patterns shift and what it might be doing to our hearts. For now, just notice and see how you can perhaps be in reciprocity with the shifting seasons in the land, in gratitude for her abundance, in celebration of the connection that you are making every day with the more than human realm. Okay, Woo Crew, that's going to be it for today's episode. It's a nice, short, and sweet one. The next 2 weeks of episodes, we're going to have guest episodes because I'm headed off on vacation, as I mentioned, to the east coast of Canada. I'm headed to Cape Breton Island to do a lovely road trip. I haven't been since I think I was 13 the last time I went, but I have a lot of family out there that I don't know. My dad was born in Sydney, Nova Scotia on Cape Breton Island, and I'm really excited that part of the world has always called to me. It, along with Ireland and Scotland, holds in my memory this sense of homecoming when I was there. Again, even though when I was 13, I didn't have this language, but I've always been pulled to my Celtic heritage, to the music and the family orientation and the welcoming in, the bringing in, the hospitality and the landscape. And Nova Scotia means New Scotland. And boy, does Cape Breton ever look like the Highlands of Scotland. So I'm so excited to be headed that way. I will be here with you the next 2 weeks with some beautiful conversations. And as always, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, curiosities, if there's a specific topic that you want me to speak to or return to, maybe that I've spoken to in the past. Drop me a comment if you're on Spotify or YouTube, or come on over to Instagram at I am Eileen March and let me know there. Again, if you're hearing this episode before the 31st, 2025, please consider joining us for Lughnasadh. If you're hearing this episode before 2026, July 31st, I don't know exactly what day the ceremony is going to be on next year, but you certainly will be invited to join us because these are part of my offerings that never change. And if you're feeling like you could use a little extra TLC as the summer turns to autumn, and maybe you feel like you've gone too hard in July and you need a little bit extra, my summer healing special is still active, as mentioned at the beginning of this episode. You're still invited. I've got a few spaces left to step in to bi-weekly remote healings. So again, completely remote. They happen while you go about your day. No need to schedule anything else in, but they feel a little bit like a massage for your soul, or so I have been told by a client. Questions about that, let me know. There will be contact info in the show notes to grab one of those, and actually a link. Oh, I made a landing page, you guys. I made a landing page, despite it being entirely deleted after making it because Mercury is retrograde. I remade it. It's good to go. Okay, this is getting a bit goofy and silly at the end, as so often it does. If you like this episode, if you like this show, please consider leaving a rating, a review, a thumbs up, a subscribe, a like, all of those things. It helps ever so much to help get this show out to more beautiful humans, more woo-curious souls. Ooh, and we're going to have a topic about the word woo soon, because I've started to, kind of dance with what that word means and why I might want to move away from it, despite it being the title of my podcast. Okay, that's all for now. Wishing you a blessed Lughnasadh. Come join me in ceremony. Learn even more about this incredible, delightful, abundant time of the year. And I will talk to you again this time next week. Bye for now.